Hey folks, can everybody see and hear me? Please raise your hand if you can. Alright, everything's looking good. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Thanks a bunch for letting me know that the YouTube video for our last webinar didn't have audio. I have re-uploaded with audio this time. So if anybody wants to rewatch last week's video, it's there. Sorry about that. I don't know really what happened there. What other announcement did I have to say before we got started? If you have not received your Raspberry Pis in the lab yet, you will be getting your Raspberry Pis in the next lab. I know Raleigh's gotten theirs. I don't know about anybody else, so get excited because we are going to be working some with those very soon. That said, is there any questions on what we went over last class? We finished up lesson 1 of our 1-2-3D design, which talked about text, grouping, making primitives, and we ended up making an animal slash robot slash whatever it may be. Last class, we then began working with the patterns, but we didn't get too far in them. So I see you don't go to labs. Are you just not scheduled for them, or are you in like the Winston-Salem, not Winston-Salem, the distance lab where you come once a month? Or, because everybody should have a lab assigned to them, but anyways, if you don't go to labs, please email Mr. Dubik. You don't have time to go to labs. Okay, yeah, in that case, definitely email Mr. Dubik so that he can mail you the Raspberry Pi. We will be using that some in both our lab and in our webinar in the next couple weeks, so please give him an email if you don't get to go to labs. So last week we finished up with patterns. We talked about 2 of the 4 different kinds of patterns here. Yes, you will get to keep your Raspberry Pis once we give them to you. Those are all yours. So get excited. Last thing we did was working with patterns, the first of which was the rectangular pattern, which lets you make multiple copies of a single object and lets you move them in 2 directions. You do have to indicate which direction you would like for them to be in, but you're also able to add or subtract copies of it. You don't necessarily have to keep your rectangular patterns on the work plane. You can also, for example, have them coming off the work plane like this. I know we briefly discussed working with circular patterns. Hang on, I see a question. Can you send me the email address so you can email me? Yeah, my email address, Brendan, is this right here. And that actually goes to everybody. If you need to email me, my email is saunders.yeot@gmail.com. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. It's okay, we haven't really gone over anything. So don't feel bad about, being late for today at least. We're just doing a review. Again, I do have the webinar with audio uploaded from last class, and I'm sorry that it didn't initially have audio. So where was I? Circular pattern. I think the last thing we did was work with the circular pattern last week. The circular pattern lets you make copies and rotate them about a certain axis. The axis can be a lot of different things. For the case right here, the axis that we rotated it about is this edge right here. But there's also, you're also able to rotate it about a plane. So you could theoretically rotate these boxes around, the face of this square, or around the center of the face of that square, for example. You're also able to rotate them about a certain angle by clicking on the rightmost pane of the pop-up menu and changing from full to angle. That will let you rotate it about a certain number of degrees instead of rotating it about the entirety equally. So, for example, this is a three instances of this square, but not rotated about the entirety equally. They're rotated 40 degrees from each other. Alright. Choose an angle. Alright, so I don't believe we got really into mirror patterns last class. Can anybody confirm that to me if we did get into mirror patterns? Regardless if we did or didn't, I'm probably going to go over it again just because it is a little bit complicated, especially compared to the first two. So I'm seeing a mix of we didn't and we did. And that's fine. My classes did go a little bit askew. I try to keep them fairly even, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way. So I will go over the mirror pattern to those who've already experienced it. There's going to be some review. Nothing wrong with review. It can always help you, you know. So I'm going to start with mirror pattern then. So the mirror pattern will let you mirror certain geometries about a certain plane or a line or anything that you define it as its axis of reflection. So this is a really, really cool tool because you only have to draw half of an object, of a symmetric object, instead of doing a full copy of the symmetric object. So if we go back and look at the, you made the pearl necklace that I mentioned last class, awesome. That one's not too complex of a build, but it's still pretty cool looking. Yeah, I remember. Yeah, I'm glad. I bet it looked really cool. I haven't actually done that exercise yet, but where was I? Oh yeah. For the cat example, or whatever you did for your animal, we manually placed every single primitive onto the head. For this, or using the mirror pattern though, we are actually able to draw half of that. So we're going to replicate whatever it was you drew last class, a cat, a robot. I had somebody do a swimmer on what's it called, the block. You did the full body of your rhino? Wow, that is going above and beyond. You have to do a circle pattern of 28 circles instead of squares. Okay, that sounds about right. And then purple daisy, yeah, I mean, whatever you did, as long as it is somewhat symmetric, so for example a cat's face or, you know, your face, then you can do that. And if for some reason I am going slow to you and you want to do some more experimentation with this software, you're definitely welcome to. But definitely keep the YouTube channel in mind, so if you need a refresher, you have that. So we're going to work with my cat example just for now to continue. You can't remember your Edmodo account. I don't know what to say about that. I hope you know what email that you used so that you can re-access your Edmodo account. Oh, I remember what I was going to say. I'm not sure exactly when we're going to announce the winners of the bridge design contest, but I will be uploading, or I'll be writing it down what day we'll announce it on Edmodo. So if I find out that it's going to be tomorrow, tonight I'll be like, hey guys, we're going to announce this tomorrow. So remember to check Edmodo. Remember to update your e-portfolio on your own time. Yeah, sorry, let's get started. You don't get anything in Edmodo? I had you, whatchamacallit? We don't post terribly often at Edmodo, but you haven't gotten any of this stuff here. No? I did have you join the correct group, right, on Edmodo? I had you join the, I think it was Charlotte Tuesday. Oh, you didn't get it. Alright. Let me find the group code for you then, Lauren. The other question, when you found the object that you did last time and opened it, it doesn't show the grid. Keep in mind, if you want to show or hide the grid on the right-hand panel, second from the bottom, grid visibility on or off. There's a button to turn it on or off. So I would keep it on if I were you. So let me find the Edmodo code for you. It says it's on, but it's still not showing. Try pressing the home button. Maybe you're either zoomed in or zoomed really far out. Where is it? Oh, right in front of my face. There we go. Alright, Lauren, write this down. The code is 6RXFK2. Let me write that down bigger so you can maybe see it. This is just for Lauren what I'm doing right now, since Edmodo is not working for whatever reason for her. This is her code. Can you use the code for Edmodo? If for some reason your Edmodo is not working, yes you can. But keep in mind this is for the Charlotte labs, so this might be a little bit different if you're not in Charlotte. Mostly, though, our announcements will be the same no matter which location you're in. Okay, then yes, you can. I'll put this back up at the end of class, so if you don't get it now, you can get it then. Just remind me to do that. Let me go ahead and get started, just so I can make sure my classes are on the same time here. This time we're going to draw our animal, daisy, whatever we're drawing, using the mirror pattern option. So go ahead, open up 123D if you have not already. And I'm going to recommend that you start with your animal's head or whatever good baseline you can find. So a daisy would also probably be a sphere. Maybe a robot would be a box. But we're just going to start with this nice old sphere here. This is going to be one of our first forays into the sketch menu. It's right next to the primitives menu. I'll go more and more into this as we go on, but for now I want you to scroll over. It's going to be the 5th option, and it's going to be called Polyline. So you shouldn't have spent so long last time making the eyes perfect. I'm not going to say you shouldn't have, because it's definitely good practice doing it manually, but once you get a little bit better with the software, it's going to be nice to have tricks like using the mirror pattern so that you don't have to worry about spending time. But we are going to start in the sketch menu and hit Polyline. I'm going to recommend Oh, your Wi-Fi is being slow? Okay. I'll wait just 1 second before I give you a set of instructions here, I guess. It's going to be important to change your view when you do this to the top view. You opened 3 and it's not letting you close any. You do have to, there's like an extra pop-up that'll happen if you try to close it. So try to make sure that you're closing that extra pop-up when you try to close this if it's messing up on you. At Polyline, once you click that, I want you to move to the navigation cube and click on top so that we have a top view of our work plane. Okay, cool, good. It's going to tell you to click on a grid, a sketch, or a solid face to start sketching. We want to draw on this work plane, so we can click anywhere to say, hey, we want to draw on this work plane. It'll then tell you to specify the first point. Now, in general, with polylines, you can just start anywhere. So click and you can define a distance and an angle, but it'll keep drawing your line until you click this green checkbox to exit. So I'm going to delete that. In this case, we just want to draw a single straight line. We're going to try to draw this line down the center of our sphere. So let's click once to specify the first point, and then click again to specify our second point. That's all we need though, so we're going to click the green check to exit sketch mode. Now if your line is not perfectly centered, that's okay. You're always able to move it just by holding down or clicking it and holding down your left mouse key. You can move it anywhere you want, but I'm going to keep it roughly centered on my sphere. And I'm then going to change the view back to a more convenient view. Let's do front. That'll probably be a good option for us here. So let's start with the eye, or a petal of a flower, or whatever it may be you're doing. My eye is going to be a sphere, so let's make it, eye-shaped and sized and everything. And let's not forget to sink it into the head by clicking on it and hitting move at the bottom of your screen, so that it's just not weird bulging eyeballs or anything like that. Now we can finally use the mirror pattern. So we're going to go into pattern and scroll all the way to the right where it says mirror. A new box is going to pop up. One said solids and the other says mirror plane. We're going to make sure solids is highlighted or darker gray. The solid that we are trying to mirror is this right here, this eyeball. We're trying to mirror this eyeball about this line so that it appears on the other side. We can then click on mirror plane. This is going to be what helps us define the plane. That line we just drew is going to be the plane. So we'll click on it once. And notice that if you do this correctly, the other eyeball will appear, and a red box will appear around your line. This red box means that your line has turned into a plane, and you can mirror the the eyeballs have been mirrored about this plane. You have to re-download it since it disappeared, but it's not working. So you'll catch up. Okay, I'm sorry that's happening. I don't know what's going on there. But once we X out of it, now we have two eyeballs perfectly equally spaced about the center of your head. So we're going to repeat this process for every piece of your object that has symmetry. So for my cat, for example, I'm going to add an ear and two whiskers to one of these sides. So for my example here, I'm going to start with the ear. Let's resize that so it looks sort of normal here. Remember to sink it into the head so it doesn't look weird. And let's do the same process to mirror it. So click on Mirror Pattern. Click on the solid that you wish to mirror. Click on the Mirror Plane option. Something crashed it? Like it totally shut down? Because it shouldn't unless you're using an older computer. Or is it going to do weird stuff like this? It closes on its own? Alright, good deal, Brendan. That's weird, Noah. Make sure to close any applications that you're not using, so just keep GoToWebinar 123D on, and everything else can be closed, but, oh, excuse me, I have the hiccup, sort of. I don't know what's happening either. That's weird. To everyone else, though, go ahead and finish up your object using the mirror tool. Objects that are not going to be symmetric, like my cat's nose, you would not need to use the mirror tool for. I'm going to let you finish that up. Please raise your hand and keep it raised once you've finished your animals, whatever your drawings, head or whatever. It's confusing it not always being an animal, but if you are finished, go ahead and try to draw more to the animal. So I see a question. Can you run my mouse over the button that I mirror with? Yes. You'd go up to Pattern, which is this 4 cubes in a square. And then Mirror is the far right option underneath Pattern. If you are finished, I would recommend you begin creating the rest of your animal. How come sometimes it doesn't like to work? It's weird. Why saying invalid? It worked last class. I feel like it only doesn't work when people are watching me. Why'd it work then? I don't know. Again, raise your hand, keep it raised if you've at least finished your animal's head. I would also recommend, once you're done using the center line as your axis of symmetry, you can go ahead and click on it and delete it to make it look a little bit cleaner. You finished way more than the head? And that's great. That's really what I'm encouraging y'all to do. I will give you about 2 more minutes before I move on. More or less depending on how y'all are feeling about it. And I will be conducting a poll very soon as well to see how my speed has been going today. Might as well finish up my cat just because I can. How do you delete things? Because you have a lot of scrap shapes around your screen. Alright, all you need to do, I'm just going to draw something real quick to show you how to delete it. You just need to click once on it, and there should be a delete key on your keyboard. Yeah, no problem. I shouldn't have messed with that. Alright. So before I continue, I am going to see how I'm doing speed-wise today, so go ahead and answer this poll for me, and I will adjust per your opinions. When you try to mirror it, it says invalid operation. I have that happen to me about 1 in every 10 times, and I'm not sure why that's happening. What I'd recommend doing is, like I was trying to do it and it was messing up with my whiskers. If you click on the center line towards the front of it, so I'll actually close on this poll in just a second to see how I'm doing before I continue with that question. Okay, so some goods, mostly goods, no opinions. I have one too fast, and that's okay. I will continue with my speed now. Remember that the YouTube channel will have the video uploaded after class today. Now, the question was when you try to mirror it, there's an invalid operation, and I did have that happen as well. So, what seemed to fix it for me, I'm going to draw one more whisker just to, actually no I can't, I deleted the center line. Okay. Draw another whisker, derp derp derp. What seemed to work to fix that is doing it just as you did earlier, except when you hit the mirror plane, make sure you hit click on the line not within the animal's head. So try to click on it like down here. I think if you click on it within the animal's head, that it's like, I can't mirror it about that. So be sure to click on that symmetry plane away from the head. Does that help? You are, and it still says that. Let me write that down real quick, and I'll see if I have a better... Yes, I will repeat how to do the second line. Just a sec, or the center line. Elijah, I will try to figure out why that's happening. Because if you got it to work once, it should work, you know, for all of the symmetry. Oh, it's working now? Okay, well that's good. I don't know why that happens, and I need to figure that out as well. So to do the center line, I'm going to delete my center line right now. What I would do, I would view your head from the top. You'll need to go into the sketch panel, which is right next to primitives, and scroll over to the fifth option, which is Polyline. You'll need to click on the work plane once to tell the program I want to draw on the work plane. Then then click to specify your first point. By that, I want you to sort of get as close as you can to bisecting the head. Click again to specify the second point, and then click on the green check to make that center line. And if you didn't place it right, you can just click and hold down your mouse button to move the line around, so you can replace it in a different spot if it's not good or not roughly symmetric. So go ahead, save what you've done so far, name it with your name, and then mirror, because you did the mirror symmetry, or mirror pattern there, and open up a new design. Oh, it worked excellent. I'm glad. I don't know why it wasn't working at first. This is all stuff I've done. Can you work on a second project? Yes, you most definitely can. I do recommend, though, you know, sort of paying attention at least, so you don't get confused. You're on a new one now? Okay, great. Now let me figure out where we are. Alright. Well, I guess I should have mentioned this before I had you close it. For future reference, though, never mind. For future reference, I'd recommend using the grouping panel, which will help keep your object together once you start making more complex objects. So if you try to move your animal's head without grouping it, everything else will stay in place except for whichever primitive you have picked, whichever primitive you're moving. So you'll need to remember to use, or to group your objects. So real quick, let me show you what that means. I'm going to do a sphere and a box for now. So right now the box and the sphere are independent. They don't move when the other moves all as well. But let's say I measured very precisely and I want this box and this sphere to be perfectly spaced. Now the question is, you had an account and it won't let you sign in, so you can't save. There will be an option to save it to your computer, and that's what you want to do. You don't want to save it to your project. Save it to your computer. But this box and the sphere are perfectly placed. So what we can do, next to the pattern option, there is an option called grouping. The first choice you can pick is group. It'll then tell us to click on the solids to group. And then you can click enter on your keyboard. When you try to move your objects now, they will move together. It's good to get into the habit of grouping, so you don't ruin the geometry you've spent so long creating. You can also ungroup the exact same way. If something isn't exactly like you want it to be designed. So I went a little bit quick over that. Sorry about that. It's not terribly important for now, though. The next thing we're going to talk about is snapping. So if you guys remember, first day of class, Mr. D had probably told you about this grouping while snapping option, on and off. For right now, I want you to turn it off. Usually you'd want to keep it on, but for now let's keep it off. And let's just place 2 boxes on your screen. The snap option, which is this magnet, is nice because it lets you immediately place 2 faces together, so 2 faces of an object. So let's click on this snap. The first face that you click on will be the face that moves. So if we want to snap the top face of this one to the bottom face of this one, we have to be sure what order we click them in. The first one that we click will snap to the second one we click. So if I don't want this second box to be underneath the work plane, we can try again by clicking this bottom part, which will snap onto the top of this one here. So snapping is really nice if you want to get objects flush together without them overlapping. You'll need to know for either later today or for next class what happens when you snap together two spheres. So let's see what happens here. That's kind of a trick question because a sphere only has one face, so it doesn't really matter where they snap. But, so that's that. Talked about snapping. Excellent. The next thing we're going to talk about is the path pattern. We can make patterns that follow along a path that you designate. You can also do it based on existing geometry, but we're going to focus more on this drawing your own path method. So once again, we're going to use the Polyline, which is contained within the sketch menu. So let's go and click on Polyline. And then click on the grid because that's where we want to start drawing on the work plane here. It's going to have us click to specify our first point. I'm just going to click very nearby the square to start it. And then let's just draw a couple more random points here. Doesn't matter where. This is a path that we are drawing. And we can then click exit to exit path mode. So the path pattern, which is between mirror and the circular pattern in the patterns menu, works very similarly to all the other patterns in that you have to define a solid and then a direction. You make the line stop by clicking the green check. There should be a green checkbox. So just like before, we'll go to the path pattern menu and click our solids because we want to create a pattern of the solid here. And then we can designate the path that we want the pattern to be repeated on. So the path is going to be this polyline we drew. From here you can either manually specify the distance between each one, or you can straight up pull it. Now by default, it's going to make 2 copies so that there will be 3 squares. But you can also change the copies to be along the path direction or not. And you can also increase or decrease the amount of copies that are going along this path by clicking on this, these areas that are pointing away from each other. That'll decrease the number. This will increase the number of patterns, or of instances of this box here. So now we just made our own pattern based on the line we drew, which can be very handy if it's neither a linear or a circular pattern. So we've briefly gone into sketching, but I want to go more into depth into sketching because having these 3D primitives is nice, but we can't always have every single object we like within these couple options here. We can't, make a pyramid very easily based on these 5 different primitives we're given, just for an example. So we're going to try sketching now. It's like drawing freehand, like with a pen and paper, but it probably looks better, unless you're a good artist, in which case, good for you, but unless you have a tablet, not going to be very easy to translate to the computer. So there are actually 2 different sketch function, or ways to get to some basic sketch objects. The first way is the obvious, by going into the sketch menu. So there's all sorts of options, the first couple being rectangle, circle, ellipse, and polygon, but you can also get to sketching these shapes by clicking on primitives and scrolling over to the far right where they have the same options here. The main difference between the two is getting to the sketches via the primitives lets you just type in a length and width and place it, whereas getting to this via the sketch option, you have to define which grid you want to draw it on, you have to specify the first corner of the rectangle, and then the second corner of the rectangle. So drawing shapes is a little bit easier using the primitives menu, but it's very important to use the sketch menu for a lot of different things, or for things that are not necessarily shapes. And we'll get more into that as we go on. So I said via the sketch or via the primitives. I was going to have you take a few minutes to experiment with some of the other sketch functions, but as we're going to get further into that next lesson, I won't worry about that now. I want to make sure I keep on track with time. So the reason we have these sketch functions is it makes it a lot more like an advanced CAD program. CAD usually involves making something 2 dimensions into 3 dimensions. So as we know, sketching is like drawing on a piece of paper, and you probably wouldn't want to 3D print just a flat sheet of paper. You could if you wanted, but I don't know why you would, unless you're bored. So if we want to 3D print something that we sketch, we'll need to add some depth to the sketches. So we're actually going to go into a new menu called the construction menu. It's to the right of the sketch menu. This will allow you to take one of these 2-dimensional sketches, make it 3-dimensional. So the first option we've got is called Extrude. If you're familiar with SketchUp, Extrude is basically the push-pull option. But I would like for you to draw a sketch of one of these shapes here. Doesn't matter which, as long as it's 2-dimensional. And I would then like for you to go to the Construct menu and click on the first option, which is Extrude. When you do this, your mouse will say, select a 2D shape or a face to extrude. So we'll just want to click once within the shape that we just drew. An arrow and a little dialog box will pop up, and you can actually change the height that way. So we just made this 2D sketch a 3-dimensional sketch, which we can 3D print. So I'm going to delete everything on my screen now. You don't have to. I just want it to look a little bit cleaner. So Extrude's a very simple, self-explanatory sort of deal here. As a result, I'm going to go to the next option within the Construct menu, which is Sweep. Now I want you to think of Sweep as sort of a modified pattern, a modified path pattern. For sweep, you will need to draw your own path using the Polyline or spline or whatever, just like before. Except instead of making many copies of one solid object, you will be pulling an object along this path. So you do it essentially the same way as you would path pattern. I'm going to go ahead and just draw a very, very quick polyline here. And for time's sake, I'm just going to start with a primitive. I'm going to start with a box. We're going to scroll into the construct menu and go to the sweep option. And this looks very familiar. This is the exact same menu that popped up for path pattern, except it says profile instead of solid. Notice that also your mouse will say select a 2D shape or face of a solid. So instead of selecting the entire shape, we just need to select a face. I'm just going to click on this face for ease of doing it. And we can then click on path and do the same thing we did with the path pattern. Once you do that, immediately your shape should be extruded along the length of the path. What may happen, it might turn red and look a little bit weird. I believe when it turns red, you can just hit enter and it should work. But it's sort of dependent on the situation. So now we're starting to get into more customized shapes, more so than just the primitives, more so than just, making a two-dimensional sketch. Now, just like sweep is similar to path pattern, revolve is similar to circular pattern. Just like with the circular pattern, you must have an axis to revolve your shape around. So for example, I'm just going to start once again with a primitive box. It's going to tell you to select a profile, which is a two-dimensional shape or a face, which I'm just going to select one at random. You can then select an axis to rotate it around. It can be itself. It can be one of these other designs you have on here. Once you click on one of these edges, though, oops, let me try that one more time, sorry. Choose the profile, axis. That didn't work as well as I was hoping. Oh, it's because I chose this axis accidentally. Okay, that makes sense. So from there you can rotate it. Now notice here that what it's doing is actually cutting a hole into it. That's actually one of the options that the construct feature offers. So I select a 2D shape around an axis. If you click on this rightmost menu here, you have options to merge, subtract, intersect, or just make a new solid. It usually wants to make a new solid for you, but sometimes it will infer what you want to do. So for example, what I just did here, it was inferring that I want to subtract this bit here. So if I notice that it changes on this menu from new shape to subtract. So if I hit enter, notice that it has subtracted what intersected it. And this stuff takes a little bit of just practice. So if it seems confusing, just give it a few tries, play around with the options some. Once you get some more practice in, it's a little bit more intuitive. And you can go to a lot of different CAD programs and use this knowledge in the same fashion. So let's see what I've got here. There's still a ton we gotta cover still. Like, what if we wanted to make a hole in something? I sort of just went over that, but there's a specific and fun example I'm going to show you using the combine tool. The combine tool is to the right of the pattern tool, or two to the right rather, sorry, it's to the right of the grouping tool. It has three options. Merge, which will combine two things and make them one group. Subtract, which will make one object which will take one chunk of the object out of a different object, which I'll show in just a second, trust me. Do I know who the bridge competition winner is? I do not, and I'm sorry. I will be posting on Moto when we will announce that. So the last thing is intersect, which will only keep the overlapping parts of your object. So I'm actually going to, with the last few minutes of class, give you a little test here. I want you to make two spheres, so just easy primitives, one with the radius of 15 and one with the radius of 5. You're going to use the subtract tool to build something that looks a little bit like the Death Star. Oops, where did my Death Star go? I had a picture of it somewhere in here. Hope I didn't delete it. Anyways, I want you to build something like this which will look like the Death Star. I don't know why my slide deleted itself. You're going to combine these two tools using the subtract to make a hole in the bigger sphere to look like the Death Star. With the last few minutes, I want you to work on that. I'll show you to do it at the very end of class. If you figure it out, let me know. We won't be going over anything else, so you are free to leave if you figure this out. But I'll show you in about a minute or two how to do this if you don't know. I'm also here for questions if you are just like, I have no idea. Yeah, no worries. Might as well get started and draw my two spheres. Radius 15, radius 5. So if you don't know it, or if you haven't figured it out, what we're going to do, we're going to snap these two objects together. Remember, it's a sphere, so it doesn't matter which you select first. Well, I guess it does a little bit, but I'm not too concerned if it's inside the work plane. We're going to move the smaller object to make it sort of indented into the bigger one. Yeah, no problem. We're going to use the subtract tool The target's going to be the bigger sphere. That's going to be the target that you want to make a hole in. The source is going to be the smaller sphere. And if you hit enter, baby, you got a Death Star brewing. So that said, it is 7 o'clock. If you need to go, you are more than welcome to. I'll be here for questions for a couple more minutes, but thanks very much for coming out, and I will talk to you all on Wednesday. Take care, Wyatt. You got it? Awesome. Good to hear. Like I said, it's a matter of practice, but it's some cool stuff once you got it. Yeah, no problem, Sam. So, alright, if there are no more questions, I'm going to head out. I'll get the webinar uploaded right after I sign out. And Wednesday, I shall see you. Farewell.